Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, survey says, let them vote. Also, the V team takes a look at the phantom special session. And Speaker Mike Hubbard says they're close on a budget deal. Since when did Pinocchio move to Lee County? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Britt, and the V team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V team. Welcome all.
Good morning to you all.
Jack, how are you?
Good to see you, Dr. Leary.
Ooh, you've been gunning for me, haven't you?
Kind of for a week.
That Eric Dirksen thing got you. Everett.
Yeah.
Eric
Okay,
too.
we need to get focused about what's going to happen in Montgomery next week.
It's getting serious, guys. Come on.
It is. A big survey came out on Wednesday from the Alabama Jobs Foundation, and it says, let the people vote. Susan, you got an early crack at that survey. It was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
It was an overwhelming survey. When you read through it, people of Alabama said, let's leave it up to us. We want to vote on this. We think our voice is important in this. To the point there was 89% of the survey said that they want to vote on it.
They want to vote on gaming.
They want to vote on gaming. They absolutely do. And some of them said, 63% said that if the legislators vote for taxes instead of trying to do this gaming bill, they're going to vote them out of office.
They're going to send them back to where they
Send
came.
them
That's a wake-up call,
But
isn't it?
but let's face it. I mean, they didn't really have to do this study. I believe I could have told you that overwhelmingly the people of the state of Alabama, even 7, 8 years ago, people wanted to have the right up or down to vote this. And then we're just a non-tax state. I mean, they're going to put people out of office when they run and say we're not going to raise taxes, and they turn around and do it.
And it's polling, across Republicans, Independents, Democrats. All those numbers are high.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that was very interesting in this poll, that the Independents and the Democrats were, right up there with the Republicans on tax issues and the voting having the right for gaming.
In fact, I've got the numbers right here. Republicans 70%, Independents 78%, Democrats 87%. Those are some high numbers.
Yeah, they are.
Will they get the chance to vote, Jack, you think?
I'm just not sure. I would hope so. And Dr. Bentley, Governor Bentley said in 2010 to me personally, I think that if the legislature votes to allow the people to vote, I'm not going to stand in the way. I'll go vote against it, but I will allow it to be voted on.
Well, I think that's what people want.
But he doesn't, and now he
He's
really
changed
doesn't.
his mind.
I know.
So, but this is, you say, will they get the chance? They're coming into session tomorrow on Monday, the 3rd.
Right.
Do I think, and it has to be over by August the 11th, by, the call and when they recess and all that. Do I think that they will get this handled in these 9 days? The answer to that question, I think, is no.
I think that's no.
There's another interesting, I'm sorry, Claire, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's another really interesting point here in that when this survey asked the question, would you prefer the Marsh Plan or a compact with the Indians, it was 77-10. And the others are undecided.
I think that's just the Alabama people. They have a real sense of what's fair.
Right.
And I don't think they want anybody to have something that everybody can't get a little piece of.
Nobody should have a monopoly. And the average person out there does not want any entity to have a monopoly, because what happens when you have a monopoly? Usually bad things happen.
Well,
look at the State House with monopoly.
Well, no doubt about it. Marsh has said, Jack, he's not thinking he can get this through right away. He wants to handle the budget first. That's the real big issue on the table.
I think so too, and then that's what they're constitutionally charged to, required to do, and I think he's taking a very smart approach.
But Governor Bentley said that he was not going to release his budget package before the session. He turned around and on Wednesday released it to legislators legislators, and so we got to look at it. Claire, there's more taxes.
Yeah,
more taxes.
it's more taxes, and I know that the House Republicans had a caucus meeting. I think it was on Wednesday this week. They all came to town to look at the budget, and I guess to look at the governor's plan. I mean, they're looking at FICA taxes. They're looking at business privilege taxes. They're looking at some fraud protection. And, you know, I guess Alabama is one of the few states that still has that exemption where you can mark off for your FICA taxes.
Yeah.
So that's why they're really pushing that one. You know, they may pass a few things like that and some of the business privilege taxes because they've tinkered with that over the last 8 years. And sometimes people think that the big corporations get too many breaks and not small business.
But Jack, you won't get any breaks under that new tax, will you?
I
don't
won't
believe
either.
I will. I don't know why Bentley is so stubborn. I mean, didn't the poll say 66%?
Yes, it did.
Of the people surveyed are against taxes?
Yeah.
I mean,
And are willing to send their legislator back
that's
home.
2/3 of the people.
I think people would rather see government cut than the taxes raised. I mean, these people are not in the mood.
And by the way, just for the record, when I was talking about the FICA deduction tax, we're one of 4 states. I said we're the only state, but there's 3 other states, including Alabama, 4 states that still allow that tax deduction.
I mean, do you really think the voters would follow through on this tax thing if they raised it and vote some of these folks out of office?
I don't know. I mean, I would be petrified if I had to run and I had voted for a tax. And I just don't think they're in the mindset to go with Bentley on this.
They want to raise taxes on cigarettes and vaping now.
Yeah,
Vaping's a big deal.
that's what kills me. You want to raise taxes on cigarettes because they really do hurt the economy with people going to the hospitals is bad for health and all that. Yet you want to encourage people to quit smoking, then you want to tax the vaping thing.
Yeah,
Notice the one tax that's not here. The soda tax.
Yeah,
the
soft
beverage
drink.
tax.
Yeah.
They talked about it for months, and now it's crickets.
Well, they took it off the table. Their lobbying team got up there, did their job, and they got it pulled off the agenda.
Well, you really want to be known as this guy raised my soft drink tax, my Dr. Thunder, or
My sweet tea.
Sweet tea tax.
Sweet tea tax.
Yeah,
Sweet tea tax Bentley.
Taxing sweet tea in Alabama ain't going over real well, I don't think.
Well, you're talking about the sweet tea in a can.
Yeah, well, or in a bottle, if you got the Milos.
We're in the South. We drink it, homemade stuff, okay?
I understand, but when you're out on the road, you don't carry your jug around with you. Maybe you do. Does she carry a jug around with her?
Yeah, but it ain't got tea in it. I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, Mike Hubbard this week said that they weren't far apart. And we're hearing from everybody we talked to that they couldn't be further apart. I mean, does that surprise you, Susan?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. The Senate is not going to hear taxes from the House. The House members by themselves are not agreeing on anything. So how in the world can they be close? It's impossible.
Yeah, it sounds like spin.
It does.
And what we keep hearing after talking to many legislators and even some of the leadership is when this session ends, we'll come back in another special session. And then as we were talking about the gaming plans, and one thing I wanted to say is while Marsh's is the one on the table that most people like, I also personally think there's room for improvement because they've got to garner certain votes to get it passed, and they got to pull some other entities in, I think.
Sure, I think they need Harry in on the thing with them.
They need the wiregrass, that's for sure.
They need the wiregrass
Yeah,
in there.
absolutely.
Well, we're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
Worst nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Welcome to Hotel Bentley. Governor Bentley is wanting to pass in the special session a bill acquiring a $50 million bond to build a hotel and convention center. Now, we technically have to call it a lodge because of state law, and a conference center. But Susan, want to spend a lot of money for a place to compete with two other places down on the beach.
As my daddy used to say, it seems like the governor's talking out of both sides of his mouth. On one side, he's screaming, we've got a budget crisis. On the other side, he's trying to get this bond issue through. In addition to the $50 million that will raise, there's $85 million coming out of the BP settlement. Now, granted, it's in a hurricane zone, so that puts another spin on it.
Chance
But it's a very big deal. I mean, we've already have two private sector convention-type centers in the state, able to hold, massive capacities. The Grand itself can only get 65%. If we compete with the Grand, what are we going to end up with? 32?
The Grand in Port Clear is a beautiful place.
It is, but I'm not opposed to the Hotel Bentley, but I just think the private sector should do it. The government shouldn't be bonding, floating a bond and building it. I think that we should let somebody in the private sector bid on it and have it. Take it.
Well, Jack, you're kind of a free market capitalist. What's your take on this?
I don't think the government needs to be in any kind of business like that.
We can't run the business of state government.
Look at what shambles we're here in state government, how much we're in arrears.
Well, and this is going to add another $3.65 million in debt service on this bond issue alone, annually.
This is probably the most beautiful beach.
Well, it's a great location.
Anywhere in the United States. And it sit there, and it was meant for the working people of Alabama to be able to go and afford.
That's right.
The studies have shown that the type of people that will be going to this resort and convention center will be in the upper 100,000 plus income range, that the folks that make average income in Alabama will not be able to take their families there. And I think that's sort of what bothers me a little bit. I mean, I don't know what y'all think, but Claire.
Well, it is a pristine location. I mean, it's a beautiful place, and somebody needs to build a facility of something there, and it needs to be utilized on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. I think the government is not the answer to that, but I think it should be private sector. That's the bottom line.
And the thing I keep hearing, get off this stand on, I'm tired of going to Florida for Alabama's conventions. You got two right here in Alabama. Go to one of them.
They used to go to Florida a lot, but everybody goes to the Grand Hotel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I mean, Grand Hotel has about 340, 350 rooms. They have around 40,000 square foot of convention space. I mean, they've got a big spa. They got golf course. Then you got Perdido Resort, Jack. I mean, you've been there. That's
yeah,
a nice spot.
I have, and I just.
It needs a little facelift, and then we got the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and people go there because they can go gambling and do all the other things as well.
Well, I always thought
maybe we should get some gambling, and we can get more business.
I thought it was funny when they originally passed that bill to be able to build this convention center and all that had a provision that said it could never be a gambling facility.
Okay,
and they took that out.
Well, they couldn't get Clay Schofield to go with them if they left it in. I mean, didn't have that in there.
Okay, but think about this. And then we've learned, 2 weeks ago or something, okay, you can't have that there, but then we're going to let the Indians make this big facility, the Blue Bubba, whatever facility in Foley, Alabama, by the beaches?
Well,
it just smells.
I mean,
there's something rotten going on here. Well, I think there's probably good intentions here, but I just worry about them going into the private sector. We can't run our own business in state government.
Well, maybe we should suggest to Senator Marsh that they put this entity of the Gulf Coast as a destination for a potential casino.
Talking about gaming, Victoryland has got a hearing before Judge Shashi on Tuesday. The AG didn't like Shashi's ruling. Shashi ruled that the AG had basically violated the Equal Protection Clause. They dismissed the case. The AG came back and said, no. They want this clarified, don't they?
Well, they do. And if I were in Milton McGregor's shoes, I would too, because they said he violated it, but they didn't say, well, you can get your machines back and you can open back up. There's this open window there. And I know that the Attorney General's office probably doesn't want him to open back. So the judge is going to have to make a ruling that can stand. It's crystal clear.
And it wasn't
not too ambiguous.
I mean, I think some people thought that was clear. He dismissed the case, but it's still hanging out there, Jack.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And So this is to determine whether or not the machines can be returned to him?
Right, and the cash.
Now, all right, does it also mean if he gets the machines back, will Shashi rule that he can open back up?
Well,
or
I think the one thing that, and I talked.
is that the question?
Yeah, I talked to Joe Espy this week, and I asked him that, and he said, look, we're asking the judge to please answer the question, are our machines legal, and what was the intent of the voters when they voted for bingo in Macon County? I mean, that's what they keep arguing, right, Susan?
Right, and if the machines are legal, that means they are bingo machines. And those CAs say that bingo machines are fine in those two counties.
Right.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how Shashi rules. It took him almost a year to rule the last time. I mean, this thing could be a moot point. You could have gaming or not gaming.
Well, I think it's clear he really didn't want to have to rule on this.
It didn't look like he wanted to rule on it. Something we reported on this week, and it really is kind of sad, Jack. 1 in 6 children in Alabama lives in poverty. Now, the shocking thing about that is that that's basically the same statistic over the last 25 years. I mean, are we just not paying enough attention to this problem? Or
I just think for so many years, the Democrats ignored the problems.
They did.
And then the Republicans take over and they're no better. You know, I think Republicans make good candidates. They make horrible lawmakers.
Well, Susan, you know, and that may be true, but this thing, the idea that every life is precious, but at what point do they go from being precious to being a burden on the state? I mean, really?
Well, as far as Senator Stutz thought with last session, you know, pretty much from when they're born, because that's when the state has to start taking care of their medical expenses, subsidizing them in schools and everything like that.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm not trying to be bleeding hard here, Claire.
I know, but you know, as a mother of 3, I mean, let's face it. It's education, it's jobs, the economy.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
People have to be educated, they have to be able to get a job, and you have to have a decent economy. Therefore, then the parents can go to work and provide for children.
No,
okay?
and I think that's what everybody will tell you. That's the right way. We got to get people employed, educated, and so on.
And the economy's not been good.
No.
We all know we don't have stellar public education.
But it's been going on for 25 years. That's the point.
We got to quit putting Band-Aids on things.
Right.
And find immediate and long-term solutions.
Now, Wayne Flint from the University of Alabama Department of History said one of the problems that we have is we're attracting or going after low-wage industries and we're recruiting them to Alabama. So they just can't get above that poverty rate.
Yeah. Well, it's not a problem we're going to fix on this show, probably in our lifetime, but it's something we should pay attention to. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Welcome, Jonathan.
Glad to be here, Bill. I hope Barron gets better.
Out of the control booth and into the fire, right?
You're a great substitute.
Well, thank you. I clean up well, don't I?
He's not as grumpy as...
No.
Not as grumpy for sure.
Have to get up real early.
We wrote a piece this week comparing Alabama to a sanctuary city for public corruption. We have had the Speaker of the House indicted on 23 felony counts of public corruption. He's still Speaker. We had Senator Tom Whatley. He was charged by a police officer who said that he saw him push or beat his girlfriend. He was arrested, then the charges were dropped. We had one legislator, Barry Moore, indicted for lying to a grand jury. He was reelected, and he was later acquitted. And then Cam Ward, who unfortunately recently got a DUI in the middle of the day and claims to have been over double the legal limit. Yet he's keeping his chairmanships. I'm not saying these are bad people, but they've done some, it looks like bad things, and there's no punishment for them.
What you're saying is if you're in a powerful position, you can get out of anything.
That's
okay?
right.
The average person, they would have gone before the judge, they would have been convicted, all these things. It's power in politics. That's what it is.
And Jonathan, if one group gets punished and the other group doesn't, that threatens us all, doesn't it?
That threatens us all. That threatens our Constitution. It threatens our freedoms. You know, you look at other states, and the second that a politician is indicted or arrested, they suspend his privileges. They take him off the boards. Sometimes they were forced to resign by their own party. And then you come here to Alabama, and nothing happens. And I hate to say this, I blame a lot of that on the voters. Like when you're indicted for lying to a grand jury, and it's all over the news media, and you still elect the person even though they've been accused of lying to a grand jury. Or in Senator Whatley's case, if you and I had done that, or we had done something similar to that, and a police officer had witnessed that, we would be in jail, or at least they would force us to go through a trial. He wasn't even forced to go through a trial.
Well, I can assure you, if I did that, my wife would be going to jail for murder because she would have killed me, right, Jack?
I don't think there's any question about that.
But
maybe worse than that.
He's absolutely on target, Jack. I mean, why do we tolerate this?
Well, you know, it's just in your face to the voters. And I am a big fan of Cam Ward's, but he's chair of the Judiciary Committee. He gets a DUI. He retains the gavel of that committee. I mean, anybody that respected the system, and I'm saying this is very critical of Cam, anybody who respects the system and the process would step aside until he gets his day in court.
But, you know, it's clear because Hubbard didn't, it gives everybody permission not to, doesn't it?
That's correct. I mean, and like he was talking about, you know, a lot of these guys are my friends. So, you know, I just think, particularly when you look at the speaker and what went on in North Carolina, South Carolina, New York, and Indiana, those speakers and the pro tem, they step down immediately. I mean, when you're in a huge leadership like that, when you lead the House of any state legislature or assembly or whatever, or Commonwealth, I mean, that, without question, he should have stepped down.
You know, Jonathan, our Declaration of Independence, at the end, they pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor. They didn't call their fortunes or their lives sacred. They called their honor sacred. Have we lost a culture of honor in our country?
I believe we have lost honor. And I think in Alabama, we are a sanctuary city for corruption. The fact that we have a Speaker of the House that was indicted on 23 felony counts, and he did not offer to resign his speaker position, not even his House position. I believe in the trial system, innocent until proven guilty, but the fact that he did not resign his position says something about the power-hungry people that we have in this state. And I believe there is no honor in that, and I think it shows a lack of care for your voters, a lack of care for your party, no matter what party you're in. The fact that you remain in a leadership position like that just shows somewhat of your character.
Well, in politics in Alabama, there are more characters than there is character, I guess.
That's true.
Is that the case, Jack?
Obviously so. I mean, I totally agree with you, Jonathan. It's a shame because as voters, we're getting cheated.
No, excuse me, it's egregious.
I mean, it's totally distracting.
I was waiting on that word. I love that word.
We had a 4-month session to pass a budget. It didn't get done. And Mike was totally distracted the whole time. Mm-hmm. They were over there filing motions during the
his
session.
lawyers were in and out. We would adjourn where his lawyer, they would adjourn, and everybody knew it. They go, well, because his lawyers are coming in for a meeting. I mean, I'm not saying he should have stepped aside from his, his legislative seat, but he should have definitely stepped aside for the speaker and got out of the leadership. He could have stayed in his seat. I'm just saying, I'm not going after the gavel. What I'm saying.
And everybody likes to use Ronald Reagan as an example. Do you imagine that Ronald Reagan, had he been indicted by a fellow Republican, that he wouldn't, when he was governor, that he would not have stepped aside until it was all over? Let this be done. I mean, there's just not the honor that we have. And honor is real simple. It means you just don't lie, cheat, steal, or put up with it.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's it.
But we have the people in Alabama, the voters of Alabama, and I love the voters of Alabama. They have put up with this. And they have allowed it to happen by reelecting these people and by allowing the media to cover things up and not report them. We have a serious media problem in this state.
Well, you're right. It brings up the point that AL.com got to sit down with Mike Hubbard, one of their reporters, and ask him 6 questions. And, you know, Jack, not a single question was about, how come you did all those 23 bad things, Mike?
Yeah, Mike, you want to comment on just maybe 16 of the 23? I mean,
we all of us have been in the media in some way.
I would love to say, now, why did you all of a sudden, just 2 weeks ago, decide that the Alabama ethics law that you so aggressively with the former governor passed, now you think it's unconstitutional 6 years later?
Yeah, that'd be a great question.
That's
they
a
didn't
great
ask you
question.
that, Claire.
That's a great question.
What about you, Jonathan? You got one?
I would ask why. The biggest thing, why are you still the Speaker of the House? Why did you not resign? And why are you putting your family through this and your party through this? And then I would ask who. You know, you've got who, what, when, where, why. Who is controlling you? Who is really behind this? And how do you have control over all these other legislators and representatives that they could reelect you the Speaker of the House? What do you have over them? So I would ask all who, what, when, where, and why. That's what I would ask.
You got one, Jack?
Yeah, what do you think is the root cause of your greed? I mean, you know, obviously as party chair, he sent business to craft masters or had it directed to craft masters, and he has thought for the last 4.5 years how he can make money off the system. It's obvious.
Well, I think the devil's in the details when you pull out all those emails between he and the former governor and other people. I mean, that's egregious.
I agree. And we're going to have to let that be the last word. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. See us on Facebook and YouTube. And, of course, every Sunday on television stations throughout the state. Thank you for watching.